Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jonathan Moyer. I am one of the Associate Directors of Music here at the Church of the Covenant, and it gives me pleasure to welcome you into this space for our Tuesday noon Organ Plus concert series. Today, we emphasize the plus portion of this weekly event featuring pianist Chris Neiner, playing on the Steinway piano here at the front. So at any point in the program, for those who are here, if you want to move to a situation where you can see the keyboard, please feel free to move around the sanctuary. Chris brings us a really delightful program of his own compositions as well as other American composers, and he's going to tell us a little bit about those works in just a few moments. I want to also welcome those who are able to join us via our live stream. We welcome you into this space here at the Church of the Covenant for this program. Whether you're able to see it with us live or at a future recorded time, we welcome you along with those who are here today. Following today's program, if you have a moment, you can join us and our artists in the rear of the church. We can share a freshly baked cookie that has been prepared from our volunteers today. We are so grateful for those volunteers who supply us with those marvelous treats on a weekly basis. If you would like to learn more about the Church of the Covenant, our events here, join our weekly email newsletter, please consider filling in our visitor survey. We have surveys there in the narthex on the lectern, as well as on our website, www.covenantweb.org. So we welcome everyone to these programs on a weekly basis. We value your ability to share the word and tell others about this series that happens here. And we look forward to greeting you each week. So without any further waiting, let us welcome Chris Neiner.
Thank you so much for being here today. Like me, you had to brave through some not so nice autumnal weather, which kind of fits this program a little bit. So a little bit of background of me. I came to Cleveland by way of the Cleveland Institute of Music in 2018 for my master's degree in composition. Prior to that, I was in Indiana, and prior to that, I was growing up in a suburb of Minneapolis. Northeast Ohio reminds me a lot of the Twin Cities area of Minnesota, in fact, because of there's such a vibrant art scene on many levels, whether it be organizations, institutions, churches, or just the grassroots efforts to bring classical music to the community. The first piece I'm going to play is one that is very personal for me because it kind of represents a culmination of everything I learned growing up. This was the last piece I wrote before going to college, and I subsequently revised it to kind of give it some finesse I wasn't aware of as a young person. But my ultimate goal was to express very different kinds of French composers I loved growing up. There are three short movements. There'll be a little bit of pause between each of them. The first one is very sassy. It's very reminiscent of Francois Poulenc. The next movement is based on Satie, who was sort of a minimalist recluse living in Paris, and an interesting character. And then the final movement is Maurice Ravel, known for his really technical writing and show-stopping compositional chops. Thank you. So the next piece on the program is Three Moods by Aaron Copland. I chose this piece for a couple reasons. One, it's another American composer. It's one of my favorite American composers. And two, I think this piece for Copland meant something very similar as the previous one did to me. This piece was written in 1921 by a young Copland. He was particularly inspired by the American composer Leo Ornstein, who's a remarkable person in that he is the only composer to have lived in 3 centuries. He was born in the late 1800s and passed away in early 2000. So he managed to live in the 1800s, 1900s, and 2K by just a few years, so good for Leo. He was a very influential, highly modernist composer at the start of the 20th century when Aaron Copland was a very impressionable young composer, and Ornstein published his own 3 moods, which Copland took inspiration from. So for Copland, this is similarly all the things he sort of learned to love growing up in the budding American music scene of the early 20th century. As you probably heard, those were all very different from each other. The first one, entitled Embittered, a really great thesaurus word for angry, wistful, and jazzy. Now, Aaron Copland was not the only American composer who saw the influence of jazz as really essential to American music and creating essentially a different sound from Europe, which is essentially the history of America trying to figure out how do we sound different. For Barber, Samuel Barber, who's probably one of the most important composers of the 20th century, this is someone who had memorized all of Beethoven's sonatas by the time he was 13. He was a true prodigy in the fullest sense as a composer and a pianist. He wrote a series of pieces called Excursions, which represent sort of a kaleidoscopic view of what American music was like, whether it be in the concert hall or whether it be in the tavern, in the home, what was really happening in an American sound world. Of the 4 pieces, I've chosen 2 to play. The first one is called In a Slow Blues Tempo. He finds ways to sort of make the piano sound like a guitar sometimes. And then the concluding movement, the Allegro molto, is what we might call square dancing. Very fast, very energetic, and very fun, and a little bit terrifying to play. But I have had great fun learning it, and I'm sure you will enjoy it. Thank you so much. All right, and now I'll jump back to some music by myself. The next piece is called Spiral Suite. This was a work that was commissioned by the Aurora School of Music. For a few years there, I worked there as a music administrator, basically making sure everyone showed up when they were supposed to. If they didn't, I called them. If they wanted to reschedule their lesson, I made it happen with some teacher in some way. I still work there as a composition teacher. I've worked with students from 10 to 65, and it's an incredible joy to teach. When you teach composition, it's kind of like a creative writing class. You're talking about word choice, you're talking about narrative, maybe characters, how do they develop, and somehow characters come out of notes. I wrote this piece because that school has a piano curriculum which incorporates a book called Easy Piano Classics by James Bastian. It's sort of an anthology of various work from the Baroque period up until about Bartók and Kabalevsky for children. The biggest issue with that book is that it hasn't really been updated. So it still lists Dmitri Kabalevsky, a Russian composer, as living, and he died in the early 80s. So it's a bit overdue for a facelift. My boss, the founder and director, Vera Holzer-Woroke, commissioned me to essentially make a 21st century supplement for this piano program. So that was how I ended up writing Spiral Suite. The name comes from the fact that the book, which I was sort of supplementing, is a very thick book with spiral bounding, so it is frequently called the Spiral Book. This work is in 4 short movements, trying my best to essentially create how do I sound in a way that is enjoyable for the adult beginner, for a child, really for an audience. I find that a lot of, we'll say, intermediate piano music is written without a listener in mind or some kind of emotional scope to communicate. So it's my goal to write something which has quite a bit of variety. The 4 short movements are Castles in the Sky, sort of think fairy tale magic, Rainy Day, much like today, a little gray and somber, a groovy dance party, and then In a Dream, which is sort of mysterious, quiet, ethereal, and drone-like. Thank you. I'll start cheating a little bit because I'm going to be playing with music, so it won't be memorized. And part of that is because the next piece is by John Adams, who is a living American composer. He's actually having an oratorio performed by the Cleveland Orchestra this season, so I would highly recommend going to that. He has basically been one of the most important people writing music in this country since the early 70s. And this piece happens to come from 1977. It's called China Gates. It's essentially a kind of shorter companion work to a longer piece called Phrygian Gates, which is very much sort of about trance, kind of layering rhythms, lots of notes, lots of notes for 4 minutes. So I'm gonna quick get my tablet set up to show me all the music, make sure the pedal to change pages works, and then I will get it ready for you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I have very much enjoyed playing for you. Those of us here in the church with us and those of us live, thank you so much all for tuning in. This is so meaningful for me to get to share my music, but also music I love with all of you. So the last piece on the program is called Two Pieces. I actually decided I'm going to do one of them. The first one is just way too long, and the second one leads in much better from sort of that transcendental floating world that John Adams painted for us. This final work is called Finding Quiet. I wrote it sort of in summer 2020 when the world was a very turbulent time. I'm one of those people who probably thought, I'm just gonna hide for a bit and then I'll come back out. So in that hiding, I wanted to try to write something sort of soothing, something that I always found relaxing to play. This is a piece that never seems to stay the same. I'm still playing for my handwritten score because even last night I'm thinking, well, this note could be longer, we could add this chord here, let's take out this measure. So it's kind of an always evolving project, and I'm excited to share it with you. This is Finding Quiet from Two Pieces.